Big loss in the Big Ten standings, possibly a major loss on the field. We will get the update on Mark Gronowski and talk about a Iowa season that may be slipping away. We'll look at the prospects here on Hawkeyes Live. Appreciate you stopping by. As always, here at the Voice of College Football, your comments and questions are welcome. Please like the video. Get that out of the way. Please like and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Join Corey, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm on a daily basis. And Corey's here, of course, from the aforementioned from the Hawkeye of the Storm, your source for Iowa athletics. Corey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing well. It was an intriguing game, an intriguing day of college football, specifically in the Big Ten. A lot of big results, 3 in particular, I think that most people had their eyes on. 1 at Kinnick, the other 2 in Champaign and in Happy Valley. And 3 extremely close games. And the Iowa result, of course, there were a few plays that, of course, did them in and possibly an injury. And, we had a situation here, and not only here, but in the Big Ten show, and you had to face it throughout the week, that because of the result that Indiana posted against Illinois, I'm guessing the week before, that this game was just deemed to be a complete mismatch and that there would be no way that Iowa could stand a chance against Indiana, because obviously we saw Indiana play Illinois and win by 53 points. So, of course, they're 53 points better than Illinois. We all know that if they played Illinois, 100 times, that they'd win all those games by 53 points, because that's the way football goes. And therefore, Iowa did not stand a chance. We both got a good look at the various score predictions throughout this show and other shows. But Iowa definitely showed that they could stay on the field with Indiana to the final second.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue, Indiana fans may not like this, but you could argue that Iowa had the game. Like, in a sense, how many times, Mark, and you've been watching football for a long time, Iowa football included, how many times have you seen Iowa win a game the way they had it set up Saturday? It was just, it was carbon copy of every other win against top 25 teams. We've seen it so many times when it's 10-10 at halftime, and then it's 13-13 in the fourth quarter. You're just waiting for the ball to drop there. And what does Phil Parker do? He dials up a blitz. Great play by Zach Lutmer. Returns at 30 yards. You're in field goal range. Game, set, and match. Most of the time, that's game, set, and match. I mean, whether it's 2016 against Michigan and Manny Rugamba's interception, or it's 2008 Tyler Sash's interception on Darrell Clark against Penn State. Iowa drives it a short distance. They get a kick from Daniel Murray. I mean, you go down the list. Penn State 2017, although Penn State responded with a last-second touchdown pass to Juwan Johnson. But the point is, we've seen this over and over and over again in Kinnick. And it was set up the way we've seen it. And I made the comment after the game, Drew Stevens missed the kick. Like, there's no other way to really explain that. I'm not being hard on Drew Stevens. I'm not, I've heard that there's been some scuttle here in the last few days. I've been told on pretty good authority that some people in that special teams unit have received threats since Saturday. I mean, totally ridiculous. This happens at every level because there's morons at every level, Mark. They're just morons everywhere. It's sad, but that's society. There's a lot of morons out there. But I hope those people get prosecuted or whatever, depending on the seriousness there. So that's ridiculous. But the reality is they missed the kick. Whether you put that solely on Drew, I don't think you can. LeVar Woods isn't doing that. Or the unit as a whole, long snapping, holding. Laces were out. Yes, they were to the left. They weren't straight out. That's a factor, sure. That has not been a smooth process all year. They had another punt blocked on Saturday. That's abnormal. We don't see that with LeVar Woods units. So as elite as Caden Weegan has been, as good of a kicker as Drew Stevens has proven to be during his career, and as good of a punter as Reese Dakin is, it's not 100%. They got some issues there. So the bye week's a good time, not just to heal, but to figure out those issues. The sad and disappointing thing about all of this, well, first of all, to address your comment, everybody who came on here and told us last week that Indiana was touchdowns better than Iowa and Iowa didn't stand a chance, and all the people I'll be kind, the people that were in the comment section of my channel all of last week calling me a homer because I predicted it to be a one-score close game. I actually had Iowa covering, which they did, and I had them winning straight up, which they did not. But I had them winning by 3, Mark. They were on the verge of potentially winning that game by 3. I mean, would any of us been surprised if Drew Stevens made that kick and then that defense held? I mean, it would have been, and here's the deal. You can talk all you want about the 3rd and 10 touchdown that was on the, I think Phil Parker blitzed one too many times, but you got to play the blitz better. You got to play coverage better. They got burned there, but that whole scenario changes if you're ahead. And so I can't say it for certain. I have a hunch that Iowa would have held and won that game had that kick gone through. I thought when Lutmer took it back into field goal range, I thought this is it. Game over. It's interesting. Tim Lester, that screenplay on 3rd and 5 was brought up today that he called for Hank Brown to Kamari Moulton. Brown kind of threw it awkwardly and put the ball way outside of Moulton's reach. Had he thrown that inside, Lester says that's a touchdown. He said, we had the right play call. That was a touchdown. It's a game of inches, game of slim margins, Mark. And unfortunately, the situation is now. Yes, they proved all the idiots wrong last week in spite of the loss. Shut a lot of people up. They also proved, I believe, in my opinion, that I'm still not convinced Indiana's on the elite tier of the Big Ten or the national level. Okay. So we'll get to that here in a little bit looking forward. But the frustrating, disappointing part about all of this is the fact that now they've lost 2 games in different ways, but by 1 score apiece. They've lost 2 games against 2 really solid to maybe, I don't want to say both teams great, but the rankings think that Iowa State and Indiana are both really good. They've lost both games, one of which being on the road by a single score. I know they took a late safety, but it was a 1-score loss regardless. And so, yeah, that's just disappointing because Iowa's usually really good in tight ball games. And if you're going to have success the way you want to have success and maybe sneak into a playoff any year under Kirk Ferentz, you're probably going to have to win those close games. You know, it was the difference in 2009, versus 2008. 2008, they lose 4 games by, I think, a combined 12 points. They go 8-4 and then 9-4 beating South Carolina in the Outback Bowl. But in 2009, they win an Orange Bowl, go 11-2 because they won all those close games. They beat UNI close in a close one. They beat Michigan State in a close one. They beat Indiana in a close one, and just go down the list. So there's still time. I don't agree. I'm not saying you were making the claim. You said at the outset, is this season slipping away? It's incredibly disappointing on every level. I try to be as objective as I can each and every week, but I would be lying if I didn't say I was incredibly disappointed after that loss Saturday. Just, again, how it all transpired, the opportunities that I felt were missed, and the fact that it's loss number 2. I was not going to be shocked if they had a loss by now, but I did not think they'd have 2. And none of the losses I had them going 9-3 preseason. But the losses I had them accumulating were later in the season. So to answer your comment, I could see why some feel like hope is lost. This is going to sound insane to some people, but this is how I am as a football fan / analyst. I'm looking at this saying they have 2 losses. They just got to win the rest of their games. And some people are going to say, you're crazy. They're not beating Oregon and Penn State and USC. And you're almost certainly right? You're almost certainly right. But the way this new landscape of college football is, it takes one big win to change the narrative. So you may think that's a delusional way of looking at it, but I can't imagine throwing in the towel 5 games in on a team that I actually think is pretty good. I think this team proved Saturday they're pretty good. And the numbers, here's the other thing. They won this game, they lost this game in a close way. It was a tight margin of defeat. And they nearly won it the way they win a lot of games. But there were some differences. And I say that because, yes, they haven't won a lot of close games against good opponents, or really any, since 2021. But even if you go back to 2021, Penn State, Iowa State, they didn't produce much offense in those games. And I'm not just talking about points, I'm talking about yardage as well. They were better Saturday on offense than the score would indicate. Normally, it's kind of the opposite way around. Usually, Iowa barely scores, but they're even worse. The eye test says they're even worse on offense than the score indicates because they get extra points out of special teams and defense. That didn't really happen Saturday. They moved the ball quite effectively, but they played very conservative on fourth down, which we expected because they wanted to control the field. And yeah, they lost Mark Gronowski late, which really hurt them in putting this game away. Ifs, ands, and buts, nobody cares. But I do believe if Mark Gronowski was in for that final drive, I think Iowa wins because I think they probably at least advanced the ball past where they did to give Drew Stevens a better kick. It's not a guarantee. I would not have been shocked if he had gone in and thrown a touchdown pass. So the screenplay would have worked, I would think. I don't see Mark Gronowski missing that screenplay. So there's a lot we can talk about. We talked about it for a long time Saturday. But the way I look at it is it's not over till it's over. And they're 3-2. We're not even halfway through the season yet. They get a bye week at a good time to get some people healthy. They should be able to clean. I have confidence in LeVar Woods cleaning up special teams. Hey, the DBs that were going to get burned by Mendoza, they didn't really get burned by Mendoza. They got burned by Mendoza maybe 2-3 plays in this game. I think 3 if you want to count the first touchdown pass, the deep ball that flipped the field, I want to say second quarter for Indiana. And then on the slant play, it was on all-out blitz, put Lee on an island, and he didn't play it well. And he missed a tackle to boot. And then they're missing some tackles right now as well. But so much better than we saw first quarter against Rutgers. If they beat Wisconsin, Mark, they get those difficult games at home. So it is frustrating that they couldn't win this difficult game at home. And I think the ante is upped here in a couple of weeks when they welcome Penn State and Oregon to town, but they are at home. And Saturday, if it proved anything or reaffirmed anything we already knew, it's that Iowa can compete with teams at home. They haven't always proven that they can do it on the road against the best of the best. And I'm not saying Indiana's the best of the best, but this is a reminder they can compete at home versus almost anyone.
So anytime that we looked at the schedule during the offseason and discussed a path to the playoff and took it section by section throughout the season, I agree with you. Hope is not lost. The games are still in front of them. Nobody is unbeatable. I don't see any 1985 Chicago Bears teams on the schedule. Everyone is beatable. However, it's a narrow path because I think we both looked at the Iowa State-Indiana section in the first quarter of the season as get one of those and then keep going from there. So they didn't get one of those, and that's why it's obviously a slim path from here on out.
But if they get one of Penn State or Oregon, which I know some people are going to say no chance, Corey, and it's certainly less of a chance than the Indiana game. But if they were to steal say they steal the first one, which I believe is Penn State, correct? I don't have the schedule up in front of me. But no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is Penn State. It's the game after Wisconsin. So if let's just play this scenario. If they beat Penn State they take care of, obviously they lose to Wisconsin on the road, all bets are off at that point. Like that's it. We got problems, right? But if they beat Wisconsin and then beat Penn State, Mark, doesn't the narrative change a little bit? Like people are at least going to be like, okay, now hold on a second. They just beat Penn State. So if they can beat Penn State at home, they can at least be competitive against Oregon at home. I'm just saying, like, people don't have to believe that that's going to happen. But I do think they proved Saturday the defense is a lot better than people were giving them credit for. After the Albany game, after the Rutgers game, and the numbers say the offense didn't play badly. So they got to get Mark back. They're not going anywhere without Mark Gronowski. I'm just telling you that right now. They're not going anywhere without Mark Gronowski. I thought it was interesting today. Tim Lester made a comment about how Hank Brown is a better athlete and a better runner than we know. And I have not seen that. I trust him when he says that. He says that he's more of edge runner. I can't remember how he described that. He more so compared Hank Brown to like a Brendan Sullivan type of runner. But man, I thought Mark. I don't know how much you watched the game because I know there were other good games on Saturday, Mark. But didn't you feel like Mark was playing well on Saturday before he got knocked out?
So I watched the 15 to 18 minute highlight package because I didn't watch the game. The game was on Peacock, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, or I would have had my eye on it. 2:30 start Central Time, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, it was in that window. So I went back, watched it, knew the final score, and first of all, yes, I had the same reaction in the aftermath that you had in real time, that when Lutmer made the interception, I thought, how did they lose this game? This can be interesting to see how this plays out. And I'm looking at the play-by-play, and I'm watching the game and watching the play-by-play at the same time. So, yeah, my initial thought was, okay, he intercepts this pass and they kick this field goal and obviously give up a touchdown. But what would be the sequence of play calling? Am I going to agree with this play calling that I see, or am I going to evaluate it as too conservative, just playing for a field goal? Which again, if they execute the screen pass, I can trust Tim Lester to say that it was open for momentum to break and them to make a big gain, if not a touchdown there.
Isn't it hard to be real critical of Tim Lester, though, in that situation with the backup quarterback who had thrown an interception?
Sure. Yes.
Like the previous drive? Like that's my hard. That's even when the play happened in real time, Mark, I was like, maybe you run the ball here. I didn't even know that I wanted them to put the ball in the air. Yeah. And trust your special teams. And that's the other. I've heard some people since Saturday say, well, why didn't they run the ball to the middle of the field? Well, typically right-footed kickers kick well from the left hash. I don't think that was a concern. And I do believe that a screen pass makes sense because it should be a low-risk throw, Mark, that gives them an opportunity at big yardage.
I'm going to address this comment on the screen. If you're a football player on a football team, you always have something to play for, obviously. Okay, obviously, my title to the live stream had to do with the competitive nature of the season, in the goal being playing for a championship. Yes. If they were 0-11 and they're playing Nebraska the last weekend of the season, yes, we can all argue that they play for pride and they're playing in front of 80,000 people and millions on TV, that they're playing for pride and they're playing for the competitive nature. Obviously, I'm talking about the aspirations of winning a championship. Okay.
Real quick,
that has to be explained. Bob, I appreciate you being here, but see, this comment from Bob says we have to start not realistically thinking of the playoffs and shoot for a respectable season. Why do we have to do anything? Why do we have to do anything? It's just like, and I'm not here to rip anybody, but we had this conversation last week with the Indiana guys, and as I was listening to that later, I was thinking one of the things they said. One of them said, it might have been Alec. He said, "Well, that's why, like, we gotta turn our attentions to Iowa." And I'm thinking, no, you don't. You don't have to do anything. What you say or your mindset does not affect what the coaching staff does. So, and my answer to Bob is, if that's going to help you feel better the rest of the way, that's fine. But if another fan can look at this and say, if we win the rest of our games, and I say that's your choice whether you want to identify with the team or not. But if Iowa wins the rest of their games, they're in the playoff. They're not wrong. Whether you think that's impossible or delusional, but you having this mindset does not affect what happens the rest of the season. You get what I'm saying? I address this all the time, that people will talk in the comment section like their attitude, their mindset, their perspective on the game or the season impacts the team. Like, oh, we better put that behind us, and we really need to focus on so-and-so, because if we look ahead, then...
Oh, by the way, I see Alec is in the chat. So that was good timing. So Alec, love you. Glad we had you on. But that was, I just noticed that later. I'm like, you don't have to we do not, as people who are talking heads, we don't have to have any mindset. Fans don't have to have any mindset. The people that have to worry about that are the players and the staff. If those players are influenced too highly on how we feel because they're watching our content, then the coaching staff doesn't have enough control over what's going on with that team and with that program. So, again, like Steve, like you can, I don't care if you say Iowa will not make the playoffs, no chance. I don't care. I don't care. I feel like I come on here and say that a lot, Mark, but I don't care what someone else says about what Iowa's going to do and what they're not going to. I don't care. All I know is if they go out and win. And by the way, I had them at 9-3. And Mark, I think you and I both agreed it's possible that 9-3 can get you into the playoffs. It is possible. And I would here's what I would say. I almost think if they were to go and win, like if two of their 3 losses, if I should say this, if one of their 9 wins in that scenario came against either Oregon and Penn State, it actually helps you along with getting a really good road win against USC. I say that because I think the committee, they haven't gotten blown out by anybody yet. We talked about that. 9-3, you can't get blown out by anybody. But I think the other part of this is the committee would more so value wins over an Oregon or a Penn State or an at USC over a win at home against Indiana or a win early in September at Iowa State. I think it might be splitting hairs there, but I tend to think that's true, and those wins would be later in the season. So if they went 9-3 let's just give you a scenario, Mark. I know we don't know what would happen nationally, and some people really resent this conversation occurring. But if Iowa were to win, let's see, how many games we got? 6 of their last 7 games. Let's just assume for this conversation, they beat Penn State in 2 weeks. So they beat Penn State, lose to Oregon, but compete, win at USC, at Nebraska, beat Michigan State, beat Minnesota, beat Wisconsin on the road. I think that's everybody. If they do that, are they in? Probably not, but it's a conversation, right?
So you're taking the conversation in the same direction I was about to point out that there is a silver lining to these 2 losses. Now, it's a thin silver lining, and obviously you wouldn't want to win the games. But if you're going to lose them, 2 things stand out here. Number one, they were both down to the wire, last minute, last second, basically walk-off games. So they lose 2, and Iowa State's winning the rest of its games. They're beating Kansas State or whomever's in front of them at this point. To date, they have their tougher games pretty much ahead of them in the Big 12. But still, Iowa State is taking care of business. Indiana beat Illinois. Indiana's taking care of business to date.
Those are 2 undefeated teams that they've lost to. That's a fact.
Yes. So it's not like if Indiana was coming in with a loss to Illinois and Iowa State had lost a game in the Big 12 or to whomever. So those 2 losses are as good as they can be right now. Their last second losses to undefeated teams. So that's the first thing. Then the second portion of it, I do think what you just stated comes into the minds of the voters, just like it does to the voting public, that the more recent results, subconsciously or consciously, are going to have more of an impact. Because I believe in the resume being the resume and all the games counting in equal. However, there has to be something, again, it could be consciously for some voters of the committee and subconsciously for others that, well, these losses were in September versus, and one of the other close losses was, whether you want to slice up Oregon, Penn State, either way, that their best wins and their best footballs right in front of us. And we are selecting a team to play in the playoffs right now. We're not selecting a team in September.
But here's the deal. They have to beat either Penn State or Oregon for that to even be a minute chance. If they lose both those games, they're relegated to at least 8-4, if not 7-5 at that point. They could still get to 6. Like it could be 6-6 by season's end. I wouldn't be shocked based on how some of the games that are on the schedule. Would we be shocked if they lose to Oregon, to Penn State, to USC, and maybe add in a Nebraska? I wouldn't. That would be very disappointing. But that would be, what would that be? That would be 6 losses. So it's a tough schedule, and this is the new reality of the Big Ten. You lose close games, you're probably not going anywhere.
They are going to be an underdog those 3 games for sure.
Yeah.
A slight underdog at USC. I don't think it's going to be anything
They
crazy.
could be an underdog at Nebraska.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. So, yeah.
My question to you coming into this show was going to be, first and foremost, not knowing at that point until we talked about it leading into the show, the health and status of Mark Gronowski, that he should be okay, and you can address this a little bit further. But if they do get into another situation, one of your main talking points during the offseason, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that you felt good about the depth of the quarterback room. And so does Hank Brown definitely have to be the guy, or is there a possibility that somebody else is a viable number 2 option? Because I did not see Hank Brown throw those 12 or 13 passes. I saw maybe 4 or 5. And
well, there's I'm not trying to excuse his very difficult position to be put into. I mean, I look at what Mark did week 1 against Albany. Mark, he was horrible early. Happy feet. He was dirtballing these, to be put into a situation at Indiana in that, like Lester brought up today, his feet have been phenomenal since he got to Iowa. That's what they like the most about him. And he said his footwork was horrible on Saturday. So I'm just saying he got that out of his system. I think he'll play a lot better if he comes in again. But I think Gronowski, like, they're not going anywhere without Gronowski. I don't know how big of a gap there is between number 2 and number 3, between Brown and Hecklinski. I think Brown knows the playbook more, probably the language a little bit better. But I think Hecklinski's the quarterback of the future. I've said that before. So I don't know. This is going to be the first week where Hecklinski is getting actual reps with the 1s through 3s. Because they really don't get reps. That's what Lester brought up today as well. They really don't get reps to guys below QB2 during the season. Those guys are typically on scout team. So, yeah, I mean, I will be very disappointed if in 2 weeks it's Hank Brown coming. They need Gronowski. To me, is the biggest thing that I'm feeling right now as an Iowa guy is, man, it's disappointing that he didn't get to Iowa sooner, because the guy, he's fun to watch. He's tough, so he reminds me in a sense of Nate Stanley and his toughness, but he's mobile, so he reminds me like C.J. Beathard. And like those two together, man, that's a pretty cool combination. And C.J. was tough too, but he didn't have the body. Like Nate Stanley had the body, but didn't have the mobility. And Mark kind of combines those two together. I'm not saying he's quite as dynamic on the ground as C.J. or quite as physical as Nate, although he's pretty darn physical. He doesn't have the size that Nate had. But I do think he's got a good chance playing in the league, Mark. I mean, I think if he stays healthy, he's got a chance to play in the league as a quarterback. I'll make sure that's made clear. I don't know if he's a guy who will get drafted, but he's got to stay healthy. That's the other thing about this. He's taking a beating because he's been running. He didn't run the ball much Saturday, but yeah, he's running the ball like he led the team in carries heading into the Indiana game. And they haven't been healthy at tailback. That's the other challenge. They've been deep there, but they're not healthy at tailback. So that's another thing that Coach Lester brought up today. Again, he was not making excuses, but he was just laying it out there. Like, it would have been nice against that Indiana team. They were ranked 2nd in the country in run defense heading into the game. It would have been nice if they had one of their power backs, but they didn't. Jazz Patterson was out. Xavier Williams was out. And he just wanted one of those guys, and he didn't have them. I thought Kamari played fine. I don't know what his final numbers was. He was fine. I think he maybe would have. He had the big run that gave them the touchdown late in the first half. I published a cut yesterday about clock management. It's just still ridiculous that Iowa didn't burn a timeout. You probably didn't see that in the condensed version, but they had a 3rd and 5 with Hank Brown on that final drive when they're trying to go equal Indiana's touchdown. And they go for 5 yards. It comes up for a 3rd and 5. They have all 3 timeouts short of midfield, and they hurry things up. And they got a first down, but they burned another 17 to 20 seconds off the clock. And with like 25 seconds left in the game, they still had all 3 timeouts. It doesn't make any sense. You're in a 2-minute offense situation. Burn that timeout when you throw short of the sticks with a new quarterback on a critical down on your own side of the field. So that doesn't make sense. I thought they really managed the clock well into the first half. But it goes to the miss kick. Yes, the blitz. I thought Phil Parker dialed up one too many blitzes, and obviously they got burned on the back end of that. And then not being able to make that tackle into the first half that created a big run to the outside that then set up another pass play. I don't know that was a good call on roughing the passer on Kenneth Merriweather, but then Indiana kicks a 50-plus yard field goal that's good, and that ties it up. Those are points off the board, Mark. Like those are significant points, or I should say points on the board that probably shouldn't have been there. Indiana had like 20 some seconds left in the half when they got the kickoff after Iowa's touchdown. That's crazy that they allowed an Indiana field goal after that. But yeah, those are things on tape you got to look back at and figure out.
So we do this each and every Tuesday, folks. We talk Iowa football with all of you. So we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We've had some good numbers on this show in recent weeks. So we do appreciate you getting out there and letting people know that we talk football, Iowa football with Corey. And of course, Corey's got the goods for you every day. Coach Don Patterson after the game. So if you have yet to take in the post game and really want to wallow or rejoice, cheer, whatever, in the aftermath of this game against Indiana, it's still posted here and also from the Hawkeye of the Storm, because that's your destination every day for Iowa football and athletics. Corey and I get together in just a few minutes. So when we're done here, Big Ten football fans, and regardless of who you root for, you're probably a Big Ten football fan if you're in this chat. We talk Big Ten football with Corey and myself. We just switch channels to go to the main channel at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central. And it's another huge weekend in the Big Ten coming up.
Real quick, can we just plug something here, Mark? Friday, in case people are not aware, myself and Tyler Kluber, washed up walk-ons, former Iowa long snapper, will be live down at Big Grove Brewery in Des Moines. So if you're in the Des Moines area or Central Iowa area, come share a drink with us, catch something to eat, catch a ball game Friday night. We'll be broadcasting there at 6 p.m. Central Time, live from the patio. I believe, I haven't looked at this, but aren't there a couple of pretty good games Friday?
Well, there sure were last Friday. This Friday, I don't remember.
I know I got a friend of mine who's playing in a game Friday. I won't say for what team, but there is one game I have a vested interest in, but maybe not. But regardless, it's supposed to be nice weather. It's been really unseasonably warm here, so please come out and support us. Just be there for the live appearance and talk to Tyler and myself. We'd love to chat with you and to meet you. We'll be down at Big Grove near downtown Des Moines Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time for our start. We'll be there a little earlier, though, if you get off work and want to swing by early.
The best college football gives us on Friday night is West Virginia at BYU at 10:30 Eastern.
Okay. Well, that's not a great matchup. BYU's pretty good.
Yeah, and last weekend, the Friday night games were exceptional. There were two great ones. All right. Yeah, you addressed the running back situation in regards to Jazz Patterson.
Reese Vanderzee is expected to be back next week. That's what it sounds like anyways. We keep hearing that. Tim Lester kind of confirmed that. It was pretty obvious today during his press conference. We got all three coordinators. I was not there in person today, but got to listen to all three coordinators, including LeVar Woods, who acknowledged that they have issues that they got to figure out. But it was pretty clear that Tim was not going to speak out of turn, that I'm not surprised if he views it this way or if Kirk just made it very clear to him, don't be given injury updates. And why do that? I mean, why feed the media, during a bye week? There's really no reason to. So keep people guessing to some extent. But reading between the lines, I think Mark will be back. It sounds like Reese Vanderzee will be back, and I don't know about Jazz Patterson. But I don't know how close Xavier Williams is either. I'm guessing he's pretty close, but they basically operated solely on the feet of Kamari Moulton and Terrell Washington Jr. on Saturday. So it'd be nice to get another tailback, available. And Kamari was the guy who missed the first part of the season. So how important it is, how good it is that they have him back. So And then, yeah, I mean, in kind of response to, I know we're going to talk about the Big Ten picture in general, but I think you and I were both not surprised whatsoever that Illinois did what they did against USC. That's what teams do. Like Indiana knocked them off their feet. Brett Bielema made it very clear post game after the loss. Hey, it's how we respond to this that's going to define us. We know Brett's a really good football coach, and it's hard for teams to travel. So it's just preposterous to me that people, A, expected Indiana to come in and rout Iowa, and then B, expected USC to go into Illinois and rout them. So I'm not surprised Illinois covered. I'm not surprised they won straight up. That's a better team than they showed against Indiana the previous week.
I have callers call me every Saturday night. Somebody will ask me this question every Saturday. What surprised you this weekend? And my answer 9 out of 10 times is, I take it very seriously, this question, and I say nothing. If you've watched sports, not just college football, if you've watched sports for a long period of time, or maybe 2 years, if you've been watching for more than a season, folks, open your eyes and realize that, yes, there are really good teams. It's not like totally random, Georgia's not going out and, losing to Middle Tennessee State. We understand it's not completely random. Like, we have no idea how good these teams are and who's going to show up week to week. Yes, we can fairly classify them. But, we've got a hierarchy just looking at the Big Ten that you can take, 5 to 8 teams in the middle. And when USC, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, and I could tack on a couple more, maybe Minnesota, we'll see them down the road. Throw a few of those, Washington in the mix. I don't know who's going to win a game between those teams when they play.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
And it is hard to win on the road.
Yeah.
Especially now with the new Big Ten, how it's laid out. There's a lot more travel, time zones, early games, late games. So that's a factor, like Iowa's game at USC, that game at Rutgers. Look at how challenging that one was for Iowa. I remember when I predicted that, and my title was a true dogfight awaits Hawkeyes, and somebody's like, that's a dogfight. They don't stand a chance then. I'm like, what do you expect? This is not Ohio State. You're not going to travel across multiple time zones, play even an average Big Ten team, and just blow them off the field. That very rarely happens. Very rarely do you have an Indiana-Illinois situation. And again, that was in Bloomington. So, hey, Ohio State struggled for a while on Saturday, and Vegas expected them to struggle for a while on Saturday. It's not easy to travel and win, especially on the West Coast. So, yeah. And how about these numbers? Mark is 59-30 against the spread. I am not a bettor, but I still pick against the spread for the fun of it. And let's put a little plug. You and me are at the top of our leaderboard internally, Mark. This is a humility test for you now to how you respond to that comment. It's true. There might be a bit of a gap between me and you, okay, but I believe that you and I are leading the pack now with our numbers against the spread.
If that's how you want to phrase it, yes. if you want to look at the top two, if you want to look at the top spot, then yes, I'm riding a pretty good wave of 10-4 against the spread last weekend, 12-4 the weekend before. So yeah, 59-30. I don't think you're going to run across that too often, folks. And between Corey Matzemick and Steve Dace, Corey's leading the way both, I believe, yes, against the spread and straight up. And you see 92-23 straight up isn't too shabby either. And now there's a new feature on Patreon where you can get these picks just per week, so you don't have to make any kind of month-long commitment. So again, go to patreon.com, MarkRogersTV, or you could just go to the main YouTube channel, The Voice of College Football, and you can get my picks, and I keep delivering. So
is that 60? I'm not a great statistician, like 65% somewhere in there.
So 60-30 is going to be 667. That's going to be a perfect. Yeah. So it's whatever, 663, something like that.
Yeah. Can we address Steve's question in the chat? And we don't have many people interact with us on Twitter, so we might as well prioritize it. Get more people watching us over on the OLX.
Oh, we do. Look at that. So we've got Steve coming in with this. Corey, minus the E next time, Steve. Corey, do you think a coach can come into Iowa and do what Cignetti has done at Indiana?
Well, that's a unique situation, obviously. The first response I have to that is, do I think it can happen? That's what he's asking. Sure, it can happen. Is it likely to happen? No. I think most people, not everybody, but most people expected Luke Fickell to get it done at Wisconsin. I mean, they parted ways with a very consistent coach, kind of like what Nebraska did with Bo Pelini. Now, Pelini and uh, Paul Chryst were polar opposites in their demeanor and character and everything, but they both won at a pretty similar rate. And I both have had similar results, but the difference was, you know, well, I shouldn't say that. I felt like at the time, the guy they hired from Oregon State, who was after
Mike Riley.
Riley, thank you, yeah. Mike Riley. Nice guy, seemed like a pretty good football coach. Oregon State's not a real easy place to win, and it didn't happen at Lincoln. And then it didn't happen with Scott Frost, and it's not yet happened with maybe they're breaking through now, maybe, but it hasn't happened with Matt Rule. And with Wisconsin, I think most people expected, man, Luke Fickell's one of the best names on the market. He's going to get it done. And so it was odd in some ways, some regards, to move on from Paul Chryst. But to see Fickell struggle like he has, it also tells me that nothing's a guarantee. And they could go get the hottest name on the market, and he may struggle at Iowa. And I don't know if you want to dissect why Fickell has struggled at Wisconsin. I know everybody talks about why that's a harder job to recruit certain types of players. And maybe that's more so why Bielema and Barry Alvarez and, Paul Chryst, those guys were even able to have success because of how they coached, the makeup of their teams. This offense Fickell's trying to run, are they able to recruit the right players for that? So that's a debate we can have. But I do like Beth Getz. So, I like the hire of Ben McCollum as men's basketball coach. It was easy for them to replace Lisa Bluter with Jan Jensen. So I don't really give her a ton of credit for that. That was pretty obvious that you had to do that. Minnie, I'm not picking on Nebraska. I'm just stating a fact. The numbers are what the numbers are. Like I said, has Nebraska, are they back, Mark? Who have they beaten?
Minnie hasn't been around, I don't think, too much, as much as she used to be in regards to maybe since the season started, to hear me. I've taken a few jabs at Nebraska. It's been pretty easy to do. No, they're not back. They're not a very good football. They're okay. They're decent.
Mark, you and I said that week 0. We had a conversation the night of Nebraska, okay. Cincinnati. You and I both said that looked like two very average to below average teams beating up on each other, and the environment was like Super Bowl level. It was great, but those are not great teams. And I think that's, by the way, I think it's great when you can have two average teams with that type of environment. That's what makes the sport so great.
Yeah, I enjoyed the game.
So, yeah.
Let me add something to the Curt Cignetti, the Curt Cignetti type coming to Iowa. It's interesting to me in terms of the opportunity of the middle of the pack or the lesser of the pack in the Big Ten, because two things have happened simultaneously. There's been the NIL change in the sport that has brought money and revenue tied to acquiring players. At the same time, that if you reside in the Big Ten and you're a have-not, like Indiana's been forever, you suddenly, even more so than you did in the past. So Indiana, let's make no mistake, that they have no excuse for being as pathetic as that they've been in football forever, earning a sizable paycheck in media rights. But in the past, at least above the table, above the board, that was poured into resources or whatever you wanted to do with it, coaching staff, and you could get better coordinators or pay a better head coach, those sorts of things. But now you can just outright pay the players in a league where, take your worst teams that seem to be laughing stocks to some portions of college football's fan base, Rutgers, now UCLA, etc., Indiana, they make more money through media rights than anybody in the country that's not playing in the Big Ten at the same time that we've had this merging of NIL. So is it possible? Sure. Go out there and spend all that media money that you're raking in at $95 million per year, Northwestern, etc.
Yeah. And by the way, I see James bringing up how Cincinnati's a 1.5 point favorite over Iowa State. By the way, I just want to, before we address that, to respond to many in this conversation about Nebraska, I still think Nebraska could end up at 9-3 very easily.
Sure.
Their schedule is, I use the term Charmin soft to label Indiana's schedule last year. So I guess it's a very similar schedules. It's a very similar schedule to what Indiana did last year. It's just a very similar schedule makeup. So if they are even decent, I think they'll be 8-4. If they're above decent, 9-3 is very possible. If they're very good, they can be 10-2 and make the playoff. I don't see a Big Ten team that's 10-2 not making the playoff. I think there's a chance they may get the pants pulled down, once they get in the playoffs. And by the way, the comment here from many about watch this weekend. What's going to be proven to me this weekend, Mark?
Nebraska's playing Michigan State
at home. At home. I listen. It doesn't prove anything to me this weekend. They may win by 2 touchdowns. It doesn't prove a whole lot. Okay.
Or they could lose by 1 score.
They could. They could lose by 1 score.
Until, this has yet to be broken. This just repeated losing by 1 score business.
Well, they beat Cincinnati by 1 score. And what has, I really don't know. This is I will admit a level of ignorance on this.
Yes.
What has Cincinnati done since that?
They're playing pretty good football. They beat Kansas last weekend by a field goal.
Okay. But
on the road.
Just to be clear, they had not played anybody else. I'm just looking at their schedule. They haven't played anybody. They played Northwestern State and Bowling Green. So again, that's a good win. I don't know how good Kansas is. They got a good offense. They got a good quarterback, although they lost their offensive coordinator to Penn State. I don't know much about what's Kansas doing. We're still early enough that you got to kind of play this game of what's going on around the conference.
My 2 Nebraska-related statistics to throw out. One would be that, yes, they did beat Cincinnati by 1 score, but when they lost to Michigan by 1 score, I backtracked, looked through it, 2-13 against the Big Ten in 1-score games. 2-13. And let this sink in. I don't know if I mentioned this to you a couple weeks ago. After they lost to Michigan, it must have been. Nebraska has now lost 28 straight games against ranked opponents. And we're not talking about Ohio State going to the playoffs every year, playing, top 5 teams at the go. We're talking, I guarantee most of those 28 are Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I bet that's at least half of those games.
True. Yeah. Because
so
more often.
Yeah, we're talking about number 21, Minnesota, number 19, Wisconsin. We're talking a lot of those kind of games.
And I don't know, who do they play? By the way, in answer to the question, Kansas, the transitive thing doesn't work. But this, like I said last week, 5 games in, when these Big Ten teams are playing even historically weaker non-conference schedules, I have to wait longer and longer into a season to start drawing real conclusions. And I said the same thing about Indiana last week. Is one of my reasons why I had doubts that they were going to come in and trounce all over Iowa, and they did not. Because one dominating win against Illinois doesn't prove really anything, because I don't know enough about Illinois, etc. So as it relates to Cincinnati's win over Kansas, Kansas, their wins this year have been against Fresno State, West Virginia, and Wagner. So I don't know about Kansas. I don't know if Cincinnati going to Lawrence last week, that on paper, that seems to be a pretty good win, because you're going on the road, playing a team that's been pretty good on offense. Probably is not going to compete for a Big 12 title this year, but has been pretty good on at least one side of the ball. But West Virginia is really, really not good. And hey, Kansas competed with Mizzou for a while. I think Mizzou's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, maybe Cincinnati. Like I said, I didn't say Cincinnati was bad. I just said I think they were probably average to slightly below average. But Nebraska beat them, so maybe Cincinnati's slightly below average and Nebraska is slightly above average. Does that make you happy, Minnie? Does that make you happy, Mark? Are we happy now?
I'm going with Nebraska being average right now until I see otherwise. They're going to have to show me.
And I could see them beating. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I could see them beating Iowa because even an average team going on the road in a very difficult environment is a challenge, especially at the end of a long, grueling year. It's going to be a short week for Iowa, as it always is on Black Friday. And that game might mean a lot, regardless of how good Nebraska is. If this might be like normally it's Nebraska playing spoiler with Iowa. Like it's oftentimes been them not, they're not going to a bowl game. They're not competing for anything, but it's them trying to figure out a way to keep Iowa from their goals. This year, it might be the opposite, not because Nebraska's talent-wise a better team, but because their record might say they're, 9-3 at that, or excuse me, 8-3 at that point, or 9-2 at that point. And so they may be in a situation where they're playing for a big, I can't believe I'd be saying a big, they could make a Big Ten title game, Mark. They could, because the conference wins count the same in this league. So,
and they may run into the same fate as when they played in their first Big Ten title game.
Is that the Wisconsin game?
Yeah, that was the 39-point loss.
Sorry, I'm not trying to laugh, but yeah, that did happen. So yeah. And Iowa, by the way, after their loss to Indiana, it's a fact they have lost to, I believe, 11. Is it 11 or 12 now? Straight top 25 teams. But I brought this up heading into the game last week. One of the other reasons why I felt like Iowa had a decent shot. I don't think we talked about this Tuesday, but Mark, let me see if I can, where's that piece of paper? I had these stats on there. I don't know if I have it anymore. One of the stats that I had written down somewhere was how Iowa, heading into that game against Indiana, had lost, I believe it was 11. I think they had lost 11 straight against top 25 teams. But do you want to guess how many of those games were at home in Kinnick?
So this probably goes back to what year would be their last win against
2021 Penn State, when they were top 3. Yep.
So since then, well, they've lost in Columbus twice. They lost that same year to Michigan at home, but I think that was probably after the Penn State game. So I'm going to say a Michigan game at home.
Yep.
And they lost, they've never lost to Minnesota. Oh, they lost that one game, the fluke game against Minnesota, the Cooper DeJean game, but I don't know if that Minnesota team was ranked. They've been doing well against Wisconsin. I'm going to say that was the only game that they lost, because then you've got postseason games. I'm going to say that was the only one at Kinnick. One.
I believe, again, I don't have my notes in front of me. I don't know what happened to my notes, but I believe the answer's 2.
2. Okay.
I'd have to go back and look at who would be the other loss. Did they play Ohio State at home in there? They didn't.
They played them in Columbus twice.
Oh, no, they didn't play. Yeah, I mean, it's you can count them. You know what? I got the note. What am I thinking? I've got the note on my phone, I think. Let me find it here.
I can probably count off these games.
Here we go.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I have the stats slightly wrong. So they had, prior to Indiana, they had lost 10 straight at home. 9 of the 10 were away from Kinnick. 9 of the 10. That's another reason why I was like, okay, come on.
I got it right.
Yes, you got it right.
Yes.
But this crap about how Iowa wasn't going to be able to compete at home against Indiana was just unbelievable. And by the way, that was not a very good Iowa team that lost to Michigan a couple of years ago. And they still only lost by, I think, 13. They had a chance in a late drive to cut it to 1 score.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Kinnick factor there. Yeah, there's a Kinnick factor there. That's why I'm not saying they have no chance against Penn State or Oregon. That's a huge advantage having those games at home. And by the way, 6 of those 10 losses since 2021 were against top 7 teams. And, we're talking 2 losses to Michigan in the Big Ten title game, a loss to Ohio State on the road, a loss to Penn State on the road, 2 losses to Ohio State on the road, lost to Penn State on the road. Obviously they had a couple of bowl games. Tennessee was, the one where they got ripped. And I was Missouri in the top 25 last year. That was obviously a close bowl loss. So that would have snapped the skid, but that was obviously away from home. I'm just saying, like, those are facts. So when you want to sit here and say, well, they haven't, I mean, I saw the comment earlier from, let's see here. Where is the comment now? Will, we haven't beaten a ranked team in 4 years, and we're talking about playoffs. Yeah, we are. Shoot me. Sorry. I'm sorry, but that's what I'm going to talk about because, again, context is important. And I think they'll probably snap that skid this year because I don't think they'll lose. I could be wrong, but I think they'll beat either USC, Oregon, or Penn State, assuming USC is ranked. Are they even ranked now after that loss last week?
I don't know. Illinois is pretty low in the rankings, so probably not, but they're probably right on the fringe.
So theoretically, they'll have 3 more chances. Nebraska may be ranked by the final week just because of their record.
Yeah. Well, remember, it was this guy right here that was saying last week that I don't have the statistical breakdown to back this up. This is just coming off the top of my head, reviewing the entire nation, that I would bet that there is a greater home field advantage that could be proven for Iowa against quality opponents than just about anyone else, if not everyone else in the country.
Yeah. So, we're going to look back. If they lose, even if they lose 3 games, but if they lose 4 or 5 this year in total, we're going to look back and at a minimum say, I mean, if they lose, think about this, Mark. If they lose 5 games and they're 7-5, which I don't think is I think that's probably a very fine guess at this point with the schedule remaining. We're still going to be able to look back and say, man, they missed a couple of opportunities in those close games, one against Iowa State, but the other being against Indiana. And likely we're going to look back and say, man, Oregon at home, man, Penn State at home. It is a big advantage. And I think maybe we underestimated it. Maybe I underestimated it a little bit at the time of how big of a deal it was that they had those games at home. So let's just let it play out. I mean, we still got time. This is a knock on wood. People say this every year, it feels like. It's a good time for a bye. And I'm glad they don't play a great team out of the bye because, it doesn't feel like they play great after bye weeks. But if they go up to Madison and lose, boy, that's a scary thing. What makes me a little bit nervous is if they come out of the bye playing like they have in the past out of bye weeks with a backup quarterback, play very conservative against the Wisconsin defense that I know they struggled against Alabama, but I think that defense is still the strength of the team. Mm-hmm. Could probably limit Iowa with a backup quarterback. And then you end up in a close one on the road. That makes me nervous because obviously then you're just playing with fire. And that could derail things.
Wisconsin's got statistically the number 1 rush defense in the country. Now they play Michigan. That's the Fox game, noon Eastern this Saturday. That's going to tell us a lot about the validity of that statistic.
How long has that been set as the Fox big noon game?
That's how weak. I think it's a deep Big Ten schedule. There's everybody's playing an okay game, like Ohio State, Minnesota, Michigan State, Nebraska. They're all watchable games. I would like to see all these games, but there are no marquee matchups. So Michigan, Wisconsin, I believe it's just from a brand standpoint, they think they're going to get the most viewers with that game. So
good stuff, Mark. Yeah. And we'll be back next week. And again, folks, if you're just tuning in or you missed the announcement, if you're anywhere in the state, but especially in the metro, central Iowa, please join myself and Tyler Kluber, Big Grove Brewery in Des Moines this Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And enjoy a great conversation, food, drink. It's all great environment down there at Big Grove.
Corey and I heading over to the main channel to talk Big Ten on the Big Ten Live Show. Join us there in 2 minutes.